The first week after humanity left, the Galactic Council treated it like a small problem. They thought humans were just angry and would come back soon. Counselor Vextar called emergency meetings and wrote strong messages, demanding that humans return. None of the messages got any answers. Maybe their communication systems broke, suggested Counselor Thex. He was a Pell, and his species was good with technology. A big quantum drive jump like that could damage systems. Maybe all their equipment stopped working at once. All of them? Counselor Shira asked. Her fins moved in a way that showed she didn't believe it. Every single human ship and station and colony, all at the same time? The council chamber became quiet. When she said it that way, the truth was clear. Humanity hadn't left by accident. This was planned. They had prepared for this and did it with perfect timing. They'll come back, Vextar said. He tried to sound confident, but he wasn't sure anymore. Where else can they go? They need our trade networks. They need our resources. They need our protection. Admiral Corvin wasn't so sure. He stood in his command center, looking at a big display showing space. Red marks showed where humans had been 1 week ago. Now those marks had question marks instead. Show me our defensive positions, he ordered. The display changed and Corvin felt sick. Aegis Point, the fortress that had guarded the eastern border for 20 years, was empty. The defense platforms were turned off. Nobody was patrolling that area. 3 whole sectors that humans had protected were now wide open. Sir, we're getting reports from the outer rim, his aide Setka said nervously. Pirate attacks have gone up 300% in the last 4 days. Of course they have, Corvin said quietly. The pirates know the humans are gone. He looked at his tactical officer. Alert all our remaining fleets. We need to move ships right now to cover those areas. Sir, our forces are already spread very thin. If we take ships from the core sectors, do it anyway. We can't leave the borders undefended. But as Corvin studied the map, he realized something terrible. The Council had 47 member species. Dozens more were affiliated with them. Their combined fleet had tens of thousands of ships. Yet somehow, losing humanity's 1,200 military vessels had left huge holes in their defenses. How had they not noticed how much they depended on humans? On the industrial world of Kravis II, the answer became clear in a different way. The atmospheric processors that cleaned the air had been built by human engineers. Now those machines were showing error messages. The local Kravis technicians looked at the displays with confusion. What does this mean? Demanded Overseer Growl. He pointed at warnings written in human standard English. His chief technician Polk touched the controls, but nothing helped. I don't know, Overseer. The humans never taught us how to read their system diagnostics, then fix it without reading it. Polk tried, but every change he made seemed to make things worse. The atmospheric processors weren't just simple machines. They were complex environmental systems that needed constant adjusting. The humans had made it look easy. They had adjusted things in real time and prevented problems before they happened. Now, without those experts, the system began to fail. Slowly at first, then faster. Within 3 days, the capital city of Kravis II had its first smog alert in 15 years. Contact the council, Growl ordered. Tell them we need human engineers back right now. He wasn't the only one making that request. All across council space, the problems started piling up. Mining operations stopped when human-designed equipment broke down. Trading stations couldn't manage their inventory because humans had set up those systems. Medical facilities couldn't fix their advanced diagnostic machines that human technicians had installed. Every request went to the council. Every request went unanswered because the council had no way to contact humanity. They tried to trace where the quantum drive signatures led, but they found nothing. It was like 1,200 ships and 40 million people had vanished from the galaxy. They can't hide forever, Vextar said during another emergency session. We'll find them. We'll bring them back. What if they don't want to come back? Counselor Shira asked quietly. Vextar's mandibles clicked with irritation. They're one species. We are 47. They need us more than we need them. But even as he said it, more reports kept coming in. The border sectors were in chaos. Critical systems were failing everywhere. The economy was starting to shrink as human-operated trade routes collapsed. On the distant colony world of Verena, the local population stood in the central square, looking up at the sky where the human orbital station used to be. For 30 years, humans had lived there and worked there. They had become part of Verena society. A young Varinan named Kellara had been engaged to a human woman named Sophie Blake. They had planned to get married next month. Now Sophie was gone, leaving only a short message that said, "I'm sorry. I have to go home. I hope you understand someday." Kellara didn't understand. None of them did. The humans had seemed happy and content. They had built lives on Varina. What could have made them leave everything behind so completely? The answer, if anyone had bothered to ask the right questions, was simple. Humanity had been watching and listening and learning. They had seen how the council worked and how it treated its members. They had noticed the way aliens looked down on them. They had felt the casual dismissal of human concerns. They had watched their freedom slowly disappear under new rules and restrictions, and they had decided they wanted no part of it anymore. In a star system far beyond council space, the Washington came out of quantum space and moved into orbit around a blue and green world. Captain Helen Rodriguez smiled as her tactical display filled with friendly signals. Ships from every human colony were there, hundreds of vessels all gathered in one place. "Welcome home, Captain," came a familiar voice over the communication system. It was Admiral Greg Palmer. He was commanding the fleet from a new orbital command station. Helen looked down at the planet below. Earth, humanity's birthplace. They had left it 200 years ago when they joined the Galactic Council. The Council had encouraged them to spread across the stars and leave Earth behind. Now they were back, and this time they weren't leaving. "It's good to be home, Admiral," Helen replied. "It's really good to be home." Back in Council space, the problems were getting worse every day. Trading stations that humans had managed were now having disputes. Species that had traded peacefully for years were fighting over contracts and terms. Without human merchants to smooth things over and maintain relationships, everything was falling apart. "We didn't just lose workers," one frustrated governor said. "We lost experts, people who knew how things worked and how to keep them working." The defense situation was even worse. Without human patrols, pirates were getting bold. They attacked merchant convoys that used to be protected. They raided colonies that used to be safe. "We need more ships on patrol," Admiral Corvin said during a military briefing. "We don't have more ships," his second-in-command replied. "We've already pulled vessels from everywhere we can. Any more and the core systems will be vulnerable." Corvin looked at the tactical map again. So many red warning indicators, so many areas at risk, and all because humanity had quietly packed up and left. "How did we let this happen?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. They had taken humans for granted. They had assumed humans would always be there, always working hard, always solving problems. They had treated humanity like servants instead of partners. Now humanity was gone and the Council was paying the price. 6 months had passed since humanity left, and the Galactic Council was learning a hard lesson. You couldn't replace 40 million humans overnight. On Kravis 2, Overseer Graal stood in the Atmospheric Processing Center, watching his technicians struggle with equipment they still barely understood. They had brought in experts from a dozen species, but none of them had experience with the specific systems humans had designed. "The oxygen levels are dropping again," Chief Technician Polk reported. His voice showed exhaustion. They had been working 18-hour shifts for months. "Adjust the flow rates," Graal ordered. "We did, sir. It helped for 3 days, then the levels started dropping again. I think something else is wrong, but I can't figure out what." Graal looked at the diagnostic display. It was filled with human technical language that made no sense to him. They had made progress translating some of it, but human engineering documentation was complicated. It was full of assumptions and shortcuts that made sense to human engineers but confused everyone else. "The humans made this look easy," Polk said quietly. "One engineer could manage this entire facility by themselves. Now we have 30 technicians and we're barely keeping it running." "They had centuries of atmospheric engineering experience," Graal replied, though it felt like he was making excuses. "We'll learn eventually. Before or after the city becomes unlivable?" Graal had no answer to that question. Across the galaxy, on the fortress world of Aegis Point, the Council's military was learning similar lessons. Admiral Corvin stood in what had been the human command center. Now it was staffed by a mixture of different species trying to coordinate border defense. "Admiral, we have 3 raider groups moving through Sector 14, reported a Pell tactical officer. "Our patrol ships are 8 hours away." 8 hours. When humans had run this sector, response time had been 40 minutes. "Move the reserve squadron from Sector 12, Corvin ordered. "Sir." That will leave Sector 12 with no defense. I know that. Lieutenant, Corvin studied the tactical display, trying to predict where the next attack would come from. Humans had seemed to have an instinct for it. They always positioned their forces where they would be needed before the threat even showed up. He was starting to understand that it hadn't been instinct. It had been experience and training. The human military culture emphasized quick decisions and taking initiative. The Council's military, by contrast, was designed around consensus and committee decisions. That worked fine for peacekeeping, but it was terrible for actual combat. Sir, the patrol squadron reports they've engaged the raiders, the tactical officer said. They're asking for backup. From where? Corvin snapped. We have nothing to send them. He watched the battle unfold on the display. The Council ships fought bravely but without much skill. They lacked coordination and tactical flexibility. They lacked the sheer competence that human forces had always demonstrated. The raiders escaped. They always escaped now. In the Council chamber, emergency sessions had become normal. Today's crisis involved the trade network. 37 major trading routes have collapsed, Governor Yen reported. His tone sounded defeated. Human merchants didn't just move goods from place to place. They maintained relationships. They negotiated deals. They smoothed over cultural misunderstandings. Without them, species who have traded peacefully for decades are now fighting over contracts and terms. Hire new merchants, suggested Counselor Thex. We tried. Do you know how many applications we received? Thousands. Do you know how many were actually qualified? Dozens. And most of those refused when they saw the working conditions. What working conditions? Vextar asked. Yen pulled up a document on the display. This is a standard human merchant's schedule. They work 12-hour days, 6 days a week. They learned an average of 7 languages fluently and could negotiate in 30 more. They studied local customs for every world they visited. They maintained relationships with hundreds of trading partners at the same time. He looked around the chamber. We didn't just lose merchants. We lost experts who had spent decades building the trading network. You can't replace that in 6 months. You probably can't replace it in 6 years. Counselor Shira had been doing her own investigation. Now she stood to present what she had found. I've been reviewing human contributions to the Council over the past century, she began. The numbers are shocking. Humans were about 8% of the Council's population, but they represented 23% of our military forces. They were 31% of our engineering workforce. They were 47% of our exploratory services. She let that information sink in for a moment. But it's not just the numbers. It's the quality. Human engineers didn't just maintain systems. They improved them. Human merchants didn't just trade. They built relationships. Human soldiers didn't just fight. They kept the peace. They made everything they touched work better. So we'll adapt, Vextar said stubbornly. We'll train new engineers. We'll recruit new merchants. We'll build a better military. With what? Shira asked. Our educational systems take decades to produce specialists. The humans had universities that could train an engineer in 4 years. 4 years, and those engineers were often more capable than our specialists who trained for 20. That's impossible, someone protested. Is it? I've studied human educational methods. They emphasize practical application and rapid learning. They encourage independent thinking. Our systems emphasize memorization and following procedures. Both approaches have their strengths, but humans produced adaptable people who could handle unexpected situations. We produce specialists who are excellent in narrow fields but struggle outside them. Governor Pell stood up. Then we change our educational systems. Educational reform takes generations, Shira replied. We don't have generations. We have right now, and right now the Council is failing. The chamber fell silent. Nobody wanted to admit it, but the evidence was overwhelming. The Council wasn't just missing humanity's contributions. It was discovering that its entire structure had become dependent on human excellence. There has to be a solution, Vextar said, though he sounded desperate now. There is, Admiral Corvin said quietly. We admit we were wrong. We apologize. We ask them to come back and offer them whatever they want. We can't show that kind of weakness, Vextar protested. Weakness? Corvin's laugh was bitter. Counselor, we're already weak. The entire galaxy can see it. The only question is whether we're wise enough to admit it. The session dragged on for hours, but nothing was resolved. The problems kept getting worse, and the Council had no real answers. In human space, Ambassador Kyle Preston read the latest intelligence reports. The Council was struggling, exactly as the predictions had shown. Every computer simulation and every analysis had pointed to the same result. The Council had grown dependent on humanity without realizing it. Now it was paying the price for that dependency. His assistant, Peter Yang, entered with a data pad. "Sir, we're receiving more messages from former colony worlds. Regular civilians are asking humans to return. Some are offering significant rewards." Kyle studied the messages. There was another one from Kalara on Verena, still trying to contact Sophie Blake. A merchant group from Pelshaw was offering humans majority ownership in a trading business. An industrial company on Kravis 2 was promising unlimited research funding. Individual offers, Kyle noted, not from the Council itself. "No, sir. The Council is still sending official demands, not requests." Kyle smiled slightly. "Then we wait. When they're ready to talk to us as equals, we'll listen. Until then, we have our own civilization to build." Outside his window, the city spread toward the horizon. It was proof of human ability freed from Council restrictions. Above it, in orbit, construction crews worked on new ships and new stations. They were building new dreams. Humanity had left the Council behind. Whether the Council could catch up was their problem now. Humanity had more important things to do. They had a future to build, and this time, they would build it on their own terms. Silent departure. Humanity leaves and the Council faces the consequences. The Galactic Council chamber was full of noise and movement. 47 different alien species sat in their seats talking and arguing as they always did. Ambassador Kyle Preston sat quietly in the human section, his face showing nothing. He had learned long ago not to show his feelings in this place. Around him, the aliens talked about humans like they were children who needed to be controlled. Kyle listened but said nothing. He had heard it all before. Counselor Vexitar stood at the center podium. He was tall and insect-like, with clicking mandibles that made sharp sounds when he spoke. His voice filled the chamber through the translation devices everyone wore. "The human delegation will follow Resolution 847C, Vexitar announced. His tone made it clear this was not a request. All human military ships will be limited to defense only. Also, humans cannot expand to new colony worlds. You have 73 colonies now. That is enough. You will stop there until we review your environmental practices." Kyle didn't stand up. He didn't argue. He simply pressed a button on his console. The screen showed his vote, abstain. It was the same vote humans had given for the past 17 resolutions. Each new rule had been more limiting than the last. "Ambassador Preston," Vexitar's voice had a warning edge to it. "Your government keeps abstaining from votes. This is becoming a problem. The Council has decided. Humanity will obey." Kyle allowed himself a small smile. "The United Earth government understands the Council's decision. We will respond in the appropriate way." What Vexitar didn't know, what none of them knew, was that every human ship and every human colony had already received their orders. The message had gone out 3 weeks ago through secret channels the Council couldn't monitor. "Come home." High above the Council's home planet of Kex Prime, Captain Helen Rodriguez stood on the bridge of her ship, the Washington. It was humanity's flagship, the most important of the 12 human vessels assigned to Council space. She watched a timer count down on her screen. "All departments ready, Captain," said Commander Jake Morris. He was in charge of weapons and tactics. "Quantum drives ready to go," added Lieutenant Lisa Grant from the engineering station. "We can leave in 30 seconds, Helen nodded. "Stay in orbit. We leave together with everyone else. Nobody gets left behind." Down on the planet in the diplomatic district, Kyle was packing his things. His assistant, Peter Yang, had already secured all the important documents and computer data. Everything else would stay behind. Let the Council wonder what they would find in the empty human embassy. "Sir, some of the aliens are watching us strangely," Peter said quietly as they walked through the corridors. Kyle noticed the looks, too. Most aliens ignored them as usual, but a few were watching with suspicious eyes. The Vryn species always suspected something. Too bad for them they would understand too late. "Let them watch," Kyle said. "In 2 hours, nothing they think will matter." The same scene was happening all across the galaxy. On the trading planet of Pelshaw, human merchants closed their shops for the last time and went to the spaceport. On the mining colony of Zera 7, human engineers turned off the atmospheric processors they had built and maintained for 15 years. They left just enough power running for the local aliens to figure things out on their own. on the fortress world of Aegis Point, where humans had protected the Council's borders from space pirates for 20 years. General Carl Hughes watched his soldiers board transport ships. Everything was moving with perfect efficiency. "General, the Pell Council is asking why we're doing unscheduled drills," his aide Major Amy Foster said. Carl didn't look up from his tablet. "Tell them it's a readiness exercise. They love those kinds of things. And when they realize we're not coming back?" Now Carl did look up. His weathered face showed a rare smile. "By then, we'll be 600 light years away. It will be someone else's problem." The timer reached 0. All across Council space, above 100 different worlds, human ships activated their quantum drives at exactly the same moment. There were no explosions, no dramatic speeches. One moment the human vessels were there, filling space with their presence. The next moment they were simply gone. Only faint energy traces remained, and those would disappear within minutes. On Kex Prime, Vexitar was reading trade agreements in his office when his assistant rushed in. The young alien looked frightened. "Counselor, the humans are gone." Vexitar's mandibles clicked in annoyance. "What do you mean, gone?" "Gone where?" "Gone, sir. Every ship, every embassy, every space station. They evacuated everything. Even Ambassador Preston left orbit 20 minutes ago." For a long moment, Vexitar just stared at his assistant. His brain didn't want to accept what he was hearing. Then slowly, very slowly, he began to understand what had happened. "Get me the defense minister, right now." Within an hour, the truth was spreading through the Council. The humans had left. Not just one ship or one colony. All of them. Every single human in Council space had vanished. Emergency meetings were called. Council members rushed to their chambers. Everyone was talking at once, their voices rising in anger and confusion. "This is impossible," one counselor said. "They can't just leave." "Where would they go?" "They were invested in our economy," another added. "They had businesses, homes, families. Why would they abandon everything?" But Kyle Preston, now safely aboard the Washington as it traveled through quantum space, knew exactly why. He pulled up a file on his personal screen. It was a list of every resolution the Council had passed targeting humanity in the last 10 years. There were hundreds of them. Rules about where humans could go. Rules about what ships they could build. Rules about how they could trade. Rules about how many children they could have on colony worlds. Rules about everything. The Council had treated humans like a problem to be managed, not like partners to be respected. "Peter," Kyle said to his assistant, "pull up the response rate for our requests to the Council over the last 5 years." Peter worked his console for a moment. "We made 147 formal requests, sir. The Council approved 8 of them." 8, Kyle repeated. "Less than 6%. He thought about the 3 times humanity had asked for a seat on the High Council, the group that made the real decisions. 3 times they had been told no. Too young, too aggressive, too inexperienced, always too something. The real reason was simpler. The Council was afraid that one species would outshine all the others, afraid that humans would show them how poorly they had been running things. Well, now the Council would get their wish. They would have their galaxy back without humans to complicate things. Captain Helen Rodriguez walked through her ship, checking on her crew. They were quiet but calm. Everyone knew what they were doing and why. "Captain," one young officer asked, "do you think they'll come after us?" Helen considered the question. "They'll try to find us, but we've been exploring space for decades. We know systems they've never even heard of. We'll be fine. What about the people we left behind? The aliens who were our friends?" That question was harder. Helen thought about the Veranon shopkeeper who had always saved her favorite fruit. The Pell engineer who had helped her fix her ship's engines 3 years ago. The Kravis teacher who had learned English just to talk with human children. "We left messages for the ones who mattered," Helen said finally. "We couldn't take them with us, but we made sure they knew it wasn't about them. It was about the Council." The Washington and thousands of other human ships traveled through quantum space, heading for a destination the Council didn't know about, a place humanity had been preparing for years, a place where they could build their own civilization, free from rules that didn't make sense and councils that didn't respect them. Behind them, the Galactic Council was about to learn a hard lesson. You can't treat people as tools and expect them to stay. You can't restrict a species and expect them to be grateful. And you can't build a civilization on the backs of people you don't respect. The humans were gone. The real question was whether the Council could survive without them. Part 2. The Silence. The first week after humanity's departure, the Galactic Council treated it as a minor inconvenience, a tantrum that would resolve itself once the humans realized their mistake. Vextar called emergency sessions and drafted strongly worded demands for their return. None of the messages received replies. Perhaps their communications are damaged, suggested Counselor Thex, a Pell representative whose species specialized in technology. A coordinated quantum drive jump of that magnitude could have caused system-wide malfunctions. All of them, replied Counselor Shira, her fins rippling with skepticism. Every single human vessel, station, and colony? Simultaneously, the council chamber fell silent. When put that way, the truth became unavoidable. Humanity hadn't left by accident. This was planned, coordinated, and executed with the precision that had made humans such valuable members of the Council's military arm. They'll be back, Vextar said with more confidence than he felt. Where else can they go? They need our trade networks, our resources, our protection. Admiral Corvin of the Council Defense Fleet wasn't so sure. He stood before the strategic display in his command center, staring at the sectors humanity had occupied. Red markers indicated human positions from 1 week ago. Now those marker. 1 year after the silent departure, the Galactic Council faced a choice it had never expected to make. They could either dissolve completely or transform into something new. Counselor Shira stood before the High Council, presenting a report that had taken 6 months to finish. Around her, the chamber was noticeably emptier. 12 species had stopped participating actively. Their representatives were present but silent. They couldn't afford to leave the council completely, but they also couldn't afford to contribute resources they no longer had. The economic analysis is complete, Shira announced. Total council economy has shrunk by 18%. Trade volumes are down 43%. Industrial production has fallen by 27%. These numbers represent the worst economic crisis in council history. She paused, letting the information sink in. We estimate it will take 40 to 50 years to return to the production levels we had before humanity left. That's assuming we make significant changes. Without reforms, recovery could take a century or more. Counselor Vextar, looking much older than he had a year ago, stood slowly. And the human situation? Unknown, Shira admitted. Our scout ships have searched 3,000 systems. We've found abandoned human outposts and evidence of their passage, but no indication of where they actually went. They've hidden their tracks too well, or they're further away than we thought possible, Admiral Corvin added. He had aged visibly too. The strain of holding together a collapsing defense network showed in every movement. Human exploration vessels operated for decades. They could have found habitable systems anywhere within 500 light-years. That's a search volume containing millions of stars. Then we expand the search, Vextar said, but his voice had no conviction. With what ships? Corvin asked. We've lost 42 vessels to pirate attacks in the past year. The Harkin Marauders practically own the eastern sectors now, and the Vryn situation gets worse every day. As if his words had summoned trouble, alarms suddenly blared through the council chamber. Vextar's personal communicator lit up with urgent messages. Counselor, his aide's voice was shaking. We have a situation. A Vryn battle fleet has crossed the border. They're heading straight for Aegis Point. The council erupted into chaos. Aegis Point, the fortress world humanity had defended for 2 decades, was still the most important strategic position on the Vryn border. Without it, the council's eastern territories would be completely defenseless. How many ships? Corvin demanded. First scans show at least 300 vessels, sir. The admiral's face went blank. We have 74 ships in range. Maybe 90 if we pull everything from nearby sectors. Do it, Vextar ordered. Sir, if we do that, we'll leave 15 colonies completely undefended. If the Vryn take Aegis Point, those colonies fall anyway. Move the ships. As the council scrambled to respond to the crisis, few people noticed the communications officer receiving a strange signal. It took her several minutes to understand what she was seeing. Counselor Shira, the young Pell woman called out hesitantly. I'm receiving a transmission. It's from human space. The chamber went completely silent in an instant. Put it through, Vextar ordered. The holographic display activated. It showed a human woman in her 50s with gray hair pulled back. She wore a simple but well-made uniform. Her expression was calm and almost sympathetic. "Greetings, Galactic Council. My name is Admiral Linda Hayes. I command the United Earth Defense Fleet. We've been monitoring your situation." "Monitoring?" Vextar's mandibles clicked with anger. "You've been hiding. We've been building," Hayes corrected gently. "But that's a discussion for another time. Right now you have a more urgent problem. The Vryn fleet heading for Aegis Point has 347 vessels, including 12 dreadnoughts. Based on our analysis of Council defensive capabilities, you will lose." "We don't need your analysis," Vextar said stiffly, "and we certainly don't need your pity." "No," Hayes agreed, "but you might need our help." The offer hung in the air, both tempting and terrible at the same time. What would it cost? Counselor Shira asked. She was always practical. Hayes smiled slightly. "A conversation. Nothing more, nothing less. Help first, negotiations after. That's the human way." "And if we refuse?" Vextar asked. "Then we wish you the best of luck with the Vryn and will continue building our civilization in peace." "The choice is yours, Counselor." Admiral Corvin stepped forward. "What kind of help are you offering?" "The kind that will end this crisis in your favor," Hayes replied. "We've had a year to improve our designs without Council restrictions. I think you'll find our new vessels quite capable." Vextar looked around the chamber. He saw desperation in every face. Finally, he nodded stiffly. "We accept your help." "Good." Hayes out. The transmission ended, leaving the Council in shocked silence. They didn't have to wait long to understand what Hayes had meant. At Aegis Point, the Vryn fleet came out of quantum space in a perfect attack formation. 347 ships. Their commanders were confident that the fortress world was undefended and easy to take. Then space rippled in a strange way. 17 human vessels appeared, coming out of quantum space in a formation that shouldn't have been possible. The jump was too precise, too coordinated. The timing was too perfect. On the bridge of the UEDS Valiant, Captain Nick Harper watched the Vryn fleet with calm professional interest. "All ships, give me status reports. Quantum drives are ready for emergency jump," reported his executive officer, Commander Lisa Grant. "Weapons are ready. Shields at maximum. Good. Open a channel to the Vryn flagship." The Vryn commander appeared on screen. His reptilian features showed surprise and confusion. "Attention, Vryn fleet," Harper said calmly. "You are in Council space without permission. Leave immediately." The Vryn commander made a sound that might have been laughter. 17 ships against our armada? Humans are either very brave or very foolish." "Neither," Harper replied. "We're just better. Final warning. Leave now, or we will force you to leave." The Vryn commander cut the transmission and ordered his fleet to attack. What happened next would be studied in military schools for generations. The human ships moved like nothing the Vryn had ever seen. Their quantum drives weren't just for traveling between stars anymore. They could make short jumps, micro hops that let them appear behind enemy formations. They could dodge incoming fire. They could concentrate their forces wherever they wanted. And their weapons had changed too. No longer held back by Council regulations. Human engineers had designed systems that were elegant, efficient, and incredibly powerful. The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it was over, the Vryn fleet was running away. They left behind 43 destroyed vessels and dozens more that were damaged. The human ships had suffered minor shield damage. Nothing else. At Council headquarters, Admiral Corvin watched the battle data in complete shock. 17 ships, he whispered. 17 ships defeated a fleet 20 times their size. They weren't just fighting, Counselor Shira observed. They were making a point, showing us what they've become without our restrictions holding them back. 3 hours later, Admiral Hayes's face appeared again on the Council's display. "The Vryn won't be back," she said simply. "We've opened diplomatic channels with their leaders. They're surprisingly reasonable when you speak from a position of strength." "Thank you," Vextar said. The words were clearly difficult for him. "You're welcome. Now about that conversation we mentioned. What do you want?" Vextar asked. "Money? Territory? Technology?" "None of those things," Hayes replied. "We want a new relationship. Equal partners, not subjects. No more restrictive resolutions. No more limitations on our development. No more treating us like children who need supervision. And in return, We'll help stabilize the council. Not as members, at least not yet, but as allies. Trade agreements, mutual defense, technology sharing on terms we both agree to. We'll even assign advisors to help train your engineers and military personnel. Counselor Shira leaned forward. Why would you help us after everything we did to you? Hayes's expression softened. Because spite isn't a foundation for building civilization. We left because we needed to find our own path, free from your restrictions. We've done that. Now we can choose to help, not from obligation but from genuine partnership. She paused. Also, you're going to be our neighbors for a long time. We'd rather have a stable, successful neighbor than one that's failing. Sometimes self-interest and helping others go hand in hand. And if we refuse your terms? Fexter asked. Then we wish you well and go our separate ways. We don't need the council, Counselor. We've proven that over the past year. The question is whether you need us, and whether you're willing to treat us with respect to get our help. The council chamber filled with urgent conversations. Species argued and debated. They calculated possibilities. Finally, Counselor Shira called for a vote. All in favor of accepting humanity's terms and opening negotiations for a new relationship? 43 species voted yes. 4 didn't vote at all. None voted. Numbert Vextar, his pride finally broken, nodded slowly. The council accepts. Let's begin talking. Admiral Hayes smiled. Excellent. I'll arrange for Ambassador Kyle Preston to arrive next week. I think you remember him? Oh yes, Vextar said quietly. We remember him. 3 months after humanity left, the Galactic Council finally had to face the truth they had been avoiding. The emergency session had been called because dozens of planetary governors were desperate. Their worlds were on the edge of collapse. Counselor Vextar stood at the central podium. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by frustration that he could barely hide. Around him, the chamber was full of anxious conversations in 47 different languages. Order, he called out. His translator device changed the word into multiple frequencies that all the species could understand. We will have order. The chamber got quieter, but the tension was still thick in the air. 3 months ago, humanity left council space, Vextar began. He chose his words carefully. We have tried many times to contact them and ask them to return. None of our attempts have worked. Worked? Counselor Thex's voice was bitter. They've ignored every message. They've refused every diplomatic approach. They've blocked every attempt to find where they went. This isn't about our attempts not working. They are deliberately rejecting us. Many counselors made sounds of agreement. Overseer Growl from Kravis II stood up. His large body was shaking with anger. My world is dying. Our atmospheric processors are working at only 40% now. We have smog for the first time in a generation. Children are getting sick, and why? Because we depended on human engineers and never learned to maintain their systems. Ourselves. Kravis II is not the only one. Suffering, added Governor Pell from Xeris 7. Our mining operations are running at 30% capacity. The equipment the humans designed is too complex for our technicians to understand. We're losing millions of credits every single day. Admiral Corvin stepped forward. His expression was grim. The military situation is worse. Pirate attacks have increased by 500% across the eastern sectors. The Harkin marauders are being bold now that human patrols are gone. We've lost 17 merchant convoys in the past month alone. Then move more ships to protect those areas, Vextar said, though he didn't sound confident. From where? Corvin's question hung in the air like a weight. We've already taken ships from the core sectors down to minimum coverage. Our fleet is spread so thin that it takes 3 times longer to respond to problems. And that doesn't even include the Vryn border situation. A Vryn counselor named Zelkan stood up quickly. The border situation is under control. Is it? Corvin pulled up a holographic display. It showed the contested zone between council space and the Vryn hierarchy. Human observers kept this region stable for 18 years. Now, without neutral people to watch over things, we've had 6 border incidents. 6. In 3 months. How long before one of those incidents becomes a war? The chamber erupted into loud arguments. Species blamed each other. They blamed humanity. They blamed the council itself. Through it all, Vextar stood silent, watching his carefully ordered galaxy fall apart. Finally, Counselor Shira called for attention. Her voice was quiet, but it carried authority that she had earned through decades of service. We need to understand what happened, she said. Why did humanity leave?
What did we do wrong?
We did nothing wrong, Vextar protested. We offered them protection, trade, a place in galactic civilization. Did we? Shira pulled up records on her personal display. Resolution 721, a limited human military development. Resolution 798B, restricted human colony expansion. Resolution 823F, created mandatory technology sharing agreements. Resolution 847C added more military restrictions and froze expansion. She looked around the chamber. In the past 5 years alone, we passed 47 resolutions that specifically targeted humanity, restrictions, limitations, requirements. We treated them like children who needed constant watching. They were dangerous, someone called out from the back. Their military was growing too powerful. Their military was defending our borders, Admiral Corvin said sharply. And they were doing it with limited resources and perfect efficiency. Do you know what human combat losses were over the past decade? 12 ships, 12 out of hundreds of battles. Their casualty rates were the lowest in Council history because they trained their people properly and gave them good equipment. Corvin's voice got harder. Meanwhile, we passed laws that restricted their ship designs. We limited their weapons development. We forced them to share every tactical innovation with the entire Council. We took their military genius and tied it down with bureaucracy. Governor Yen from the trading hub of Pelshaw stood up. It wasn't just military matters. Human merchants worked on 217 worlds. They paid their taxes. They followed regulations. They became part of local economies. And what did we do? We investigated them constantly. We accused them of unfair trading practices because they were more efficient than our own merchants. We passed laws specifically designed to slow them down. Yen's expression showed bitterness. I reviewed the records. Do you know how many formal investigations the Council launched against human businesses? 3,412. 3,000. In 20 years. And how many actually found violations? 41. Less than 2%. We harassed them constantly because we couldn't compete with them. The chamber fell silent as everyone realized what they had done. They asked for representation on the High Council. Counselor, Thex said quietly. 3 times they asked. 3 times we said no. We said they were too young, too inexperienced, too aggressive. But the real reason was that we were afraid. Afraid that one species would do better than the rest of us. Vextar wanted to argue and defend the Council's decisions, but he couldn't. Deep down, he had known the truth. They had all known. Humanity hadn't been treated as equals. They had been treated as useful tools, valuable but ultimately not important enough to respect. So what do we do now? Asked Governor Pell. We need them back, Overseer Grull said desperately. My world cannot survive without their technology. They won't come back, Shira said with certainty. Would you? After everything we put them through? Then we find them, Vextar declared. We send ships to explore every sector and search every system until we locate human space. Admiral Corvin shook his head. Sir, humanity operated hundreds of exploration vessels. They've been mapping regions we've never even visited. They could be anywhere in a sphere containing millions of systems. Finding them could take decades, and that's assuming they want to be found. We have to try, Vextar insisted. The Council cannot function without them. Perhaps, Counselor Shira said softly, that's the real lesson here. We built a civilization that depended on one species to work properly. Then we treated that species with contempt. We took their contributions for granted and punished them for being successful. This isn't humanity's failure, it's ours. The session ended without any real solutions, but with a growing sense of fear. Across Council space, the problems kept spreading. Every day brought new reports of failing systems, collapsing trade routes, and increasing unrest. Meanwhile, in a system 500 light-years away, Kyle Preston sat in a comfortable office overlooking a thriving human city. His communicator signaled with another message from the Council. It was the 47th such message he had received. He deleted it without reading it and went back to his work. Humanity had moved on. The question was whether the Council could do the same. Down on the street below, humans walked freely. They built things. They traded. They lived their lives without worrying about what some distant council thought of them. Children played in parks without wondering if they would be allowed to stay on their colony world. Engineers designed new technologies without worrying about sharing requirements. Merchants made deals without constant investigations. This was what freedom felt like. This was what it meant to be treated with respect instead of suspicion. Kyle looked at the deleted message indicator on his screen. Part of him felt bad for individuals in council space. Good people like Kilara on Verena, who had lost someone they loved. Honest workers who had been friends with humans. But the council as an institution? They had made their choice. They had decided that controlling humanity was more important than respecting them. Now they were learning what that choice cost.